we used to go in from the Eudlo side to where it's really close to the cave, but we sort of stopped doing that because you actually got to go through someone's backyard. There's another way in, as I told Dean, and to get to this place we camped at, well, I guess to get to the caves, it'd probably be about 45-50 minutes ride. That's on a bike.
Was this pretty much, was it a forest area or open scrub, or what sort of countryside?
Well, Eudlo, well, the whole area really, the area we were in it's very up and down, deep gullies. It opens up to sort of open forest in some areas. Where we were, there was sort of heavily wooded with, the blady grass, and as I said, we were up on top of the hill, and as you looked out eastward, it went down to a rapid slope, and behind us it went down to another slope that ran down into a deep gully.
Okay, how many people with you at this time?
There were, to begin with, there were 4, but when the incident happened, there was only 2, myself and an ex-girlfriend. I don't know why, we just decided we were going to set camp up here. There were 4 of us out there on bikes. There was 2 bikes, was a local, and my mate I used to go to school with, we used to do camping out there, my ex-girlfriend and myself. We had a fire going. But the fire it wasn't roaring or anything, but it was getting off plenty of light. My ex-girlfriend and I decided to pop into the tent for a bit of a cuddle. And by this stage, the fire had sort of started to die down, and at first I took no notice of it, but I started hearing, like the crickets around the camp, they suddenly stopped making their noise. And then at first I thought I was just hearing things, but I thought I could hear like really softly hushed footsteps like someone would make as they were walking close to the tent. And I thought I was just hearing things until Chelsea had said to me, "Oh, look, did you hear that?" And I thought, well, what the hell was that? And we sort of stopped and we were really quiet and we didn't say nothing. We sat there and listened, and look at me dead, you could hear this person, well, at the time I thought it was a person, walking around the tent, and every time it went around the tent onto the fire side, you could sort of tell that it was moving further out and away out of the firelight, because it had approached from the side where the fire was on the other side, so it was darker. And as it came back up behind the tent, it sort of come in closer again. We were both sort of pretty scared by the stage, and I didn't know what was going on. It just did that a few times, really. It didn't make any sound, and I couldn't smell anything. They reckon you can smell really bad smells with Yowies, and I couldn't smell anything. And I sort of worked up the courage to have a bit of a peek out the back. The back of the little 3-man tents, you got that mesh on the inside and you got the little flap that hangs down the back. That was part way up, and I managed to sort of work up enough courage to crawl over and have a bit of a peek out of it. And that's when I sort of saw it, and the fire by this stage was sort of died right down to just a few little licking flames and a glow. What I saw was probably around about 7 foot tall. It was hairy. It had a really thick neck. You couldn't sort of distinguish a neck between the head and the shoulders. Its arms seemed to be out of proportion with its body. They seemed to be sort of longer, and I don't know what that was about. Dean later told me that that's pretty well a description of what they look like. Their arms are a bit longer. The reason it took off was we could hear the motorbike coming, and this thing sort of must have sensed that there was someone coming, and as the bike came over the last sort of rise, he had the light on the bike on, of course, and that's when I heard sort of a real low sort of a growl. Well, I didn't know what we called a growl. It was like someone letting off a really big belch, real low, and then you could just hear it walking down the side of the slope, and that was it. We were both terrified. I mean, I was absolutely frozen with fear when I saw this thing, and I thought, if this thing's going to walk over and have a go at us, we're going to die. And we sort of hopped out, sort of looked at them. She never said a word. I said, I'm going to bed.
How long did you sort of have it in view?
It seemed to me at the time to be a long time. You could see the sort of long matted hair hanging off the sides of the arms.
Okay, was its arms down by its sides, or was that? Yeah,
it was down by its side. I didn't see it sort of lift its arms very much at all.
And you could actually see the hair hanging down on it?
It had like a rippled appearance, like someone's matted, messy hair.
You mentioned that it didn't seem to have much of a neck, I think.
Well, if you can imagine seeing a person, like a silhouette of a person, it's quite easy to say, that's the head and that's the neck and then that's the shoulders. This thing, it seemed to be like just a stubby little, have a head or a neck. It sort of looked all of one thickness, and it was really thick set across the shoulders. That was another thing that really sort of stuck in my mind. Oh, its whole body, it was built like a brick shithouse, eh?
And it would have been a lot wider than a person, I mean a normal person?
Easily, it probably would have been sort of twice my width, across the shoulders. that its arms seem to be right out of proportion with its body. There's only one other person besides Dean that I've ever talked to this about, and that's my wife. Its head was probably a little bit wider and stubbier than a human's, just on a little bit bigger maybe too. It had very, very broad shoulders. It's like I said, it seemed to be very thick set, and its sort of chest, from its chest under about halfway down its chest, it started to sort of taper down to probably half a width of a man's hips again. Across the shoulders is probably twice the width of me, at that stage anyway. Yeah, it was big. Well, when I first looked out, I thought, it's a person, but then, shit, that's a big person. It's not the sort of thing people would readily admit to, I suppose. I mean, even me sitting here talking about it, it makes me nervous.
I was really interested to hear that you'd had a conversation with some Aboriginal men.
One night we were all sitting around, I started talking to these guys just about, and the subject come up about these things. They described basically a Yowie, but he said they're not called Yowies, we call them feather feet. Basically said that they're the same as Yowies, but out here they're called feather feet.
And they called them feather feet, and why they call them feather feet?
They call them feather feet because when they know they're being followed or tracked, they become very sneaky and they leave no easily found or followed tracks. That was why he said they call them feather feet, because they can't be followed and they're extremely quiet when they want to be. He said a large male of these creatures would always, if you're out by yourself, like a person on their own, a large male would always have a go and try and get hold of you. He said a female with young, she's likely to have a go at you as well, and he also said that if you ever see a female with young, it's always a definite that there's a large male somewhere close by. Even if you don't see him, there'll be a large male there. He said they're big, so I'm assuming he was basically talking about what we sort of term as a Yowie. One other thing too I forgot to mention, he said that they do stink, and they smell like rotting emu flesh.